Have you ever caught yourself staring blankly at your laptop at 2 a.m. with this heavy, suffocating feeling in your chest? Imagine Solo, a 30-year-old guy, a dedicated 9-to-5er pulling in a pretty decent salary right here in the US. But right now, his screen is a brutal, chaotic mess. One tab shows a credit card balance flashing deep in the red. Another is an email warning him that this month's rent is due. And the worst one? The tab right in the middle. It's his Instagram feed, completely flooded with friends showing off their European vacations or proudly flexing their brand new Teslas. That feeling, I know it. It sits on your chest like a ton of bricks. We're told that by age 30, if you just put your head down, work hard, and get a stable job, everything will just fall into place. But what's the reality? Why is Solo, and honestly maybe you too, constantly drowning in bills despite working to the point of burnout? Why does the cycle of getting paid, paying off debt, and going broke feel like it's never going to end? Look, after more than a decade in the personal finance space, I've seen thousands of stories exactly like Solo's. And here's the secret nobody tells you. It's not because you're lazy, and it's not because you're not smart enough. The harsh truth is that the system is quite literally designed to bleed you dry. So in today's video, we're going to sit down and unpack the brutal reality that Solo had to face. But more importantly, I'm going to reveal a magic number to you, the $66,000 milestone that completely saved his financial life, and show you exactly how it can help you buy back your own freedom. Let's circle back to Solo. Like a lot of us, he isn't lazy. He wants to build wealth, and he wants to escape the daily grind. But the road to financial peace is almost never a straight line. Solo had to drag himself through the mud, taking 3 brutal hits that completely crushed his spirit. And the first hit is also the sneakiest trap our generation falls into, the comparison trap and lifestyle creep. That year, thanks to his hard work, Solo got a promotion. His salary jumped from $60,000 to $75,000 a year. Now, in the US, a $15K bump is no joke. Mathematically speaking, he could have just funneled that extra cash straight into his 401K or Roth IRA. But behavioral psychology points out a cruel irony. When our income goes up, our ego demands an upgrade, too. Solo is scrolling through social media. He sees his college buddy just bought a brand new car. He sees a former co-worker checking in at a luxury apartment with an infinity pool. A feeling of self-pity and envy starts creeping into his mind. So, instead of investing, Solo decides to move out of his $1,200 apartment in the suburbs and into an $1,800 luxury apartment downtown. His fully paid-off Honda Civic? Traded in for a brand new SUV with a $500 monthly car payment. He tells himself, "Man, I've been hustling so hard, I deserve a treat." But Solo didn't realize a brutal truth. He was comparing his blood, sweat, and tears of year 2 to someone else's year 10, or sometimes just fake glamour funded by a mountain of debt. His salary went up, but his margin for savings was completely wiped out. By the end of the month, his bank account is still sitting at 0. He's just making his landlord and the banks richer while wearing a disguise of poverty wrapped in velvet. The second hit comes when Solo's patience finally runs out. That's when he realizes his financial bucket has a massive hole in it: credit card debt. Watching his savings inch up so painfully slow, Solo starts getting anxious. All around him, people are flexing about doubling or tripling their net worth day trading stocks or crypto. Unable to handle the FOMO, Solo throws his rare $3,000 in cash into some high-risk stocks, hoping to get rich quick. But here is a hard pill to swallow that I always have to remind my clients. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world if it's working for you, but it is your absolute worst nightmare if you're carrying consumer debt. In the US, the average credit card interest rate hovers around 24 to 25% APR. You know what? Even legendary investor Warren Buffett only averages about a 20% annual return. So there is no magical investment on Earth that will consistently yield 25% to offset that ballooning debt of yours. Solo ignoring his $5,000 credit card debt to go day trading was a fatal mistake. At this stage, plugging the hole, meaning wiping out bad debt, is the single highest and most guaranteed ROI, return on investment, you can get. And then, the real tragedy strikes with the third hit, pushing Solo into a phase psychologists call the messy middle, the valley of despair. After a ton of struggling, penny pinching, and sacrificing, Solo finally scraped together his first $15,000 into an index fund. He started to see a glimmer of hope. But life doesn't run on an Excel spreadsheet. Mass layoffs swept through his company, and Solo lost his job. Even worse, less than a week later, his car broke down with major engine failure. The repair bill? A whopping $4,000. Because he naively believed that just throwing all his money into investments was enough, Solo had zero cash in his emergency fund. Without a bodyguard to protect his accounts, he was forced to do the most painful thing imaginable. Log into his brokerage app and hit sell on his entire $15,000 portfolio, right in the middle of a bleeding red market, just to get cash to pay his bills. He locked in his losses. All his efforts over 2 agonizing years vanished into thin air, sending him straight back to square one. The feeling at that moment wasn't just regret. It was a total collapse of faith. Have you ever seen a reflection of yourself in Solo's story? Have you ever pinched every penny, skipped eating out, held back on shopping, only to be forced to drain every last cent of your hard-earned investments just because a random emergency dropped on your head? If you have, drop a comment and share your story down below. I want us to remind each other that you are not alone in this fight. Stumbling is inevitable. The truth is, most people will just throw in the towel right here in this valley of despair. They give up on investing and go back to the paycheck-to-paycheck loop, just trying to survive the day. But not Solo. The pain of hitting rock bottom taught him a blood-soaked lesson, forcing him to tear down and rebuild his entire mindset from scratch. And that is exactly when the magic number of $60,000 officially entered his life, unlocking an ultimate comeback you would never expect. After hitting rock bottom in the messy middle, Solo sat slumped on a beat-up sofa in his cramped apartment. He faced 2 choices. 1, be bitter at the world, blame the economy, blame inflation, and go right back to the same old paycheck-to-paycheck work and pay debt cycle. Or 2, tear everything down and rebuild from scratch. Thank God he chose option 2. When he landed a new job, Solo realized a hard-learned lesson, one I constantly repeat to my clients. Our biggest mistake is trying to use willpower to save money. You know, human willpower is exactly like a phone battery. You wake up in the morning with 100% battery, promising yourself you won't spend money on dumb stuff. But after a draining day at work, getting yelled at by your boss, being stuck in gridlock traffic on the freeway, your willpower battery drops to like 5%. That's exactly when it's so easy to just swipe your card for an overpriced dinner, or buy something you don't even need just to comfort yourself. Because of this, Solo decided to patch the bug in his system by completely removing willpower from the equation. He set up automation. The exact day his paycheck hits his bank account, the system automatically funnels money straight into his emergency fund and his 401k. Solo doesn't even see that money anymore. He shifted from the mindset of saving what's left after spending to a completely different level, only spending what's left after investing. And this is where we talk about the magic number that kept Solo from ever giving up. Why was he so obsessed with the $60,000 milestone? You might have heard the billionaire Charlie Munger say, the first $100,000 is a bitch, or is the hardest. He's right, but not entirely accurate for the vast majority of us. Munger is a billionaire talking to millionaires. For a normal person working a 9 to 5, saving modest amounts every month, The real mathematical tipping point is actually $60,000. Let's do some simple math together. The US stock market, specifically the S&P 500 index, has a long-term historical average return of about 10% a year. If you have $60,000 invested, 10% of that money will generate $6,000 in returns for you every single year. Now look back at your own effort. If you're consistently pinching pennies, saving $500 a month, over a year you're contributing exactly $6,000. Do you see the magic happening here? At the $60,000 mark, the interest generating itself perfectly matches your blood, sweat, and tears for an entire year. You are no longer grinding alone. You've officially hired a second worker, your own money. And this employee is absolutely perfect. It works 24/7, never complains, never calls in sick, and every single cent it earns gets reinvested to keep working for you the next year. Looking back at Solo's journey, I usually break it down into 3 phases, and knowing exactly where you are will determine whether or not you survive this financial game. Phase 1 is from $0 to $60,000. I call this the grind. If you put in $500 a month, it will take you about 7 grueling years to hit this number. 7 years of tightening your belt, watching your friends buy houses and upgrade their cars, while your account just slowly inches up. It's incredibly boring and invisible. But remember my words, in this phase you are not just collecting money, you are building a machine. You can't yell at a half-assembled engine for not starting yet. Do not give up at this step, because this is when the concrete foundation is being poured. Right now, where are you on the journey to building this first machine? Phase 1 is always the most brutal test. What milestone are you at on your way to that first $60,000? Drop your current number in the comments down below. Think of it as a pledge, a way to remind yourself to stay consistent every single day. Phase 2 is from $60,000 to $200,000, the compound curve. It took you 7 years to get the first 60K, but to go from 60K to 200K, it only takes about 8 more years. You cover more than double the distance in roughly the same amount of time. Solo's emotions at this point completely flipped. He opened his brokerage app not with anxiety, but with pure excitement, watching compound interest literally bend the chart upwards. And finally, phase 3, from $200,000 to $1 million. Money doing the work. Once you hit 200K, the market is naturally generating $20,000 a year in returns for you. Your $6,000 contribution from your paycheck is basically just a drop in the bucket now. At this point, the machine has completely taken over. It sounds absurd, but it's absolute math. The journey to make that last $500,000, from 500K to 1 million, is actually easier and takes way less time than the grueling struggle to scrape together your first $60,000. That is the ultimate reward for the patient. But how did Solo survive the endless 7 years of phase 1 without breaking down again? What secret cheat codes did he use to accelerate the process? 7 years. I know, when you hear that number, 7 long, grueling years just to clear phase 1, a lot of you watching this right now are probably just shaking your heads and letting out a heavy sigh. At 30 years old, with bills stacking up and the pressure to succeed weighing on your shoulders, we usually feel like we don't have enough time to go slow anymore. So the question is there any way to fast-track this brutal journey? How on earth did Solo manage to significantly cut down that time spent stuck in the valley of despair? The answer lies in 3 acceleration strategies, or what I like to call legal cheat codes, that Solo used to force his wealth-building machine to run at maximum capacity. And let me tell you, they require some serious psychological trade-offs that aren't exactly easy. The first strategy, and arguably the most ruthless but powerful lever: attack your biggest expense, which is housing. You know, random finance gurus on the internet love telling you to stop buying a $5 Starbucks coffee every morning to get rich. Honestly, Cutting back on a few coffees isn't going to change your life trajectory. It'll just make you cranky before your workday even starts. Solo understood that here in the US, housing often gobbles up 30%, sometimes even 40% of a young person's income. To create a real breakthrough, he had to go straight for this Achilles heel. He made a decision that his friends called insane. He completely ditched his ego as a 30-year-old man. Solo moved out of his comfy $1,600 a month apartment and moved into a smaller, older unit further away from the city center for just $1,100. It was cramped, had fewer amenities, and definitely had zero Instagrammable angles. But that temporary discomfort instantly freed up exactly $500 in cash every month, a huge amount to pump straight into his investment machine. Philosophically speaking, Solo accepted a little short-term hit to his ego to buy back his freedom for the rest of his life. Next is strategy number 2, rate stacking. This is the perfect antidote to the lifestyle creep disease we talked about earlier. When Solo landed a new job with a higher salary, instead of rushing to upgrade his car or shop for designer clothes like he used to, he adopted an ironclad rule. He set up an automated system to immediately funnel 50% of any raise into his investment account before he even got used to his new standard of living. For example, if he got a $600 monthly raise, $300 would silently flow into the stock market. He could still use the other half to improve his life. By doing this, Solo never felt deprived or lived too miserably, yet he never stopped pumping massive fuel into his wealth-building engine. And finally, strategy number 3, build a windfall funnel. Behavioral science shows that when we get a year-end bonus or a tax refund check from the IRS, our brains tend to label it as found money. And because it didn't come from our daily 8-hour grind, it's so easy to splurge impulsively on expensive vacations or the latest tech gadgets. But Solo completely changed his frame of reference. He treated every unexpected windfall as a time machine. He threw 100% of his bonuses and tax refunds straight into his investment funnel. He didn't see it as money for a fun weekend. He saw it as buying back months or even years of his youth that he wouldn't have to spend grinding away in the future. Thanks to this combination of 3 weapons, swallowing his ego to lower housing costs, stacking his income rates, and capturing every windfall, Solo crushed that 7-year grind. His machine was activated way sooner than expected. So when that $60,000 figure finally popped up on his screen, how exactly did the psychology and life of a 30-year-old man change? You know what the biggest shift was for Solo the moment he saw that $60,000 figure pop up on his brokerage screen? It wasn't the math. It was a feeling. A deep, strange, and incredible sense of relief. In financial psychology, we call this financial calm. Think about it. Back when his account was just a few $1,000s, every time the stock market took a dip, Solo couldn't sleep. He'd panic, terrified of losing his hard-earned money. But once he had that $60,000 machine behind him, a 10% market correction, meaning $6,000 evaporating on paper, didn't scare him at all. He'd been in the market long enough, and he'd been through the ringer, so he knew the charts would always bounce back stronger. He understood in his bones that the economy's short-term sneezes could never break the long-term trajectory of patience. And the best part? This net worth completely changed Solo's standing at work. When you're broke, you cling to your 9-to-5 like a drowning person clutching a life raft. You're forced to swallow your pride and deal with toxic bosses or a soul-crushing environment just because you're desperate to pay your rent at the end of the month. But with $60,000 and a solid emergency fund backing him up, Solo stood a little taller. The desperation vanished from his voice. He could negotiate his salary with confidence because he knew that if he had to walk out that door tomorrow, he'd be just fine. That is the ultimate power of money. It doesn't just buy stuff. It buys you self-respect and the power to say no. At this point, the momentum is unstoppable. Investing is no longer a sacrifice where you're debating whether to buy new shoes or buy stocks. it becomes a joy. Once you see your money silently working and growing while you sleep, you'll be hooked, and you'll never want to stop. After walking through the trenches from debt to success, Solo wanted me to share his 3 biggest takeaways on the power of compound interest for all of you in your 20s and 30s. Takeaway number 1. The machine doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be turned on. So many young people here in the US are stuck in the waiting trap, waiting for a raise, waiting to pay off student loans, waiting to save up $10,000 before even thinking about investing. But listen to me. The most powerful thing about compound interest isn't the amount of money, it's the time. Don't wait for perfection. Start your machine today, even if it's just $50 a week. Takeaway number 2. Slow down to move faster. It sounds counterintuitive, right? But the truth is, you can't build a fortress on a foundation of mud. Be patient. Wipe out that high-interest credit card debt and build up that $8,000 emergency fund first. Those are your foundation bricks, your armor, ensuring your compound interest machine never gets smashed to pieces by a broken car or a surprise medical bill. And finally, takeaway number 3. Make discipline invisible. Never bet your future on the fragile battery of human willpower. We are terrible at fighting temptation. Instead, automate everything. Set your accounts up so the money is siphoned off into your investments the exact day your paycheck hits. Once you forget that money even exists, the compound interest machine will quietly do its magic. You see, we've all made stupid mistakes in our 20s and struggled through our 30s. But the math of compound interest is always fair. It's just waiting there for anyone with the patience to stick with it. You see, Solo's journey wasn't some fairy tale where magic solutions just fell out of the sky. It was raw, messy, and filled with painful stumbles in that valley of despair, not to mention a lot of quiet sacrifices. But his story is the most vivid proof of one simple truth. We've all been there, overspending in our 20s, struggling to keep our heads above water in our 30s. But the math, the discipline, and the power of compound interest, they treat everyone exactly the same. Compound interest doesn't care where you started. It only cares if you have the patience to keep your wealth machine running. If today Solo's story made you hit the pause button and realize you see a bit of yourself in there, if you're ready to ditch the flashy traps and start fixing your own financial system, then smash that subscribe button right now. To welcome you to your own journey toward financial calm, I've put together a gift, completely free just for you. My ebook, The 7-Day Financial Cleanup Challenge. The link to download it is right at the top of the description box below. Grab your copy and start putting it into action today. Don't forget to subscribe so we can keep building your wealth-generating machine together in the next videos. Thank you so much for sticking with me until these very last seconds. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.